Is there something about the way you approach it that you think is different than other actors?
No, I don't think I prepare any more than maybe certain other actors. I don't know how they work. I mean, I think certain projects, certain parts you prepare more than others, you know, and sometimes you don't have time to prepare. It goes as good as if you'd done all this months of preparation, because once you come to doing it, you have to throw it away anyway. Just go like we're going one-to-one into the other guy's eye and just talk and listen and talk. But sometimes you do more than others. But I don't do, I think that's been overemphasized.
Talking and listening, which is not that easy. It's not that easy necessarily, and especially when it gets to certain emotional levels. But he's very good at that, and I love to take from other actors when it's real within an imaginary set of circumstances. When it's real. Actor's faith. That's what it takes, you know, within a set of imaginary circumstances.
Yeah, one moment of truth, I mean, that's capsuled for eternity, and you can't take it away from a guy. I don't care if he seems as if he's more like himself or he's playing like this. If you're going to do this, then it better come from yourself and not from some idea of how a guy goes like this. So the character has to come from you turned in a certain way, so it's still you. Remember in New York, we were talking to some people in the theater, and a young actress or something. I said, you don't become the character. She said, what do you mean? All my life, I mean, like it went against her whole thesis she was writing in school. You become, I said, no, you don't become the actor. It's as if you become the actor. You do, but you don't, because you turn yourself in a certain way, and you still got to use yourself. And when you stop using yourself to be that other person, then you're in trouble, because you start acting a conceptual thing out here somewhere. And that's why a guy like Spencer Tracy was terrific. He may not have appeared versatile, but he was on the money most of the time. I mean, I remember one time, like, Lee Cobb supposedly gave the great performance of Death of a Salesman. I'm sure it was terrific. He's a very talented man. But I'll never forget, I saw him in a two-shot with Spencer Tracy in a movie. Your eye went to Spencer Tracy. It's like my dog Gus out there. It was more purity, you know. A little bit of acting, a little bit. This guy was purer.
What's the actor's territory that nobody, including a director of the highest rank, belongs in?
What I thought about this before is, and not all the time, but sometimes an actor will, without sounding pretentious, will arrive at a certain moment. He will come to a certain state in a performance that it's impervious to anything. I mean, it's truthful, it's full. You may not like the guy's personality, you may not like his previous work, but if a moment is pure, it happens. And once you've been there, not many people have been there. And so it's like, stay away. You know, directors, critics, whatever. Once you've gotten there, that's, I mean, it's a state, really.
Sometimes you meet very interesting people, actors too, that drink and they carry on, and you say, geez, you know, especially when you're young, you're insecure about who can do what, you know. You see a guy like that, and he's an interesting, fascinating guy, you know, they drink, they carry on, or they charismatic personality, and then when they try to transfer it, they can't. Then you might see you know, certain people that aren't as obviously magnetic in life and so forth and so on. They may walk into a room, you may not, you know, even recognize them, and they have whatever it takes talent-wise to make that transfer, to be able to utilize what they have or use themselves in an imaginary situation to come alive and create something that's really immediate.
People say you got to be bigger than life. There's nothing in this world bigger than life. Some people's personalities appear as if they're bigger than life, but if you take selections from life and rearrange them in your work or whatever, to some it may appear as if it's bigger than life, but I mean, nothing can be bigger than life. And a lot of times when people try to be bigger than life, then they push. And they begin to act, and they grind, you know, it becomes too much. Nothing can be bigger than life to me. I think you should try to make it like life. A couple of things that got cut out that bother me. I got a tape beforehand, and the thing that was cut out that really, I called the producer and said, this, you know, please. It's the moment where Jake, the guy, spurs his own horse before I can do it and hangs himself. And I don't know, for whatever reason, the director said, let's try it one more time. We were satisfied. He said, let's go one more time. I said, fine. So when they had two cameras, and when the horse went out, I had as good a moment as I've ever had in my career. I don't know what took over my body physically and emotionally. Something just began to shake and happen that I can't explain. I don't know if I could ever do it again, but it just happened involuntarily. And they forgot to put it in for whatever reason. And then when I got a hold of the producer, he did put it in.
Well, adios, boys. Hope you won't hold it against me. Never meant no harm.
It's important because, you know, General Schwarzkopf said the other night, I don't trust a man who doesn't cry. And with those Texas Rangers, these tough guys, I mean, I did some of my research reading about these guys, these Texas Rangers. And one of the leaders was killed. Collectively, they just broke down and wept, all of these tough, mercenary type of men. So I think that you got to be willing to show this other side of these guys. You know, the other side, the human side, the vulnerable side, because they're like that. Just because they're like killers doesn't mean they don't have feelings.
The one thing we can be sure of about you as a director is that you'll never tell an actor to tense up.
No, I hardly ever use the word action when we did a gypsy film. I say, okay, go ahead, you know, rather, because very often that word action, there's a certain tension that sets in. Except when there were certain obvious scenes when they run, they say, action, because they want to hear that. Because, you know, people love the word action, cut, roll, you know, like play like Hollywood. But try to keep people loose, yeah, because, you know, I've been through my moments, you know, probably still do, you know, with certain directors and certain situations where that heady kind of self-consciousness, nervousness takes over and you just can't beat it.
I once worked with a guy who said, now in this movie I want you to kind of walk like Bogart, but also like this French actor. I said, hey, wait a minute, let me do it. I don't try to imitate other actors. I mean, what's that about?
Despite all the acclaim you received, are you skeptical about critics in general?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I watched the critics on TV last night, these guys in the tuxedos talking. I mean, show me one critic that directed a film and I'll show you a tremendous failure. Show me one critic that wrote a great script, I'll show you tremendous failure. Show me one critic that gave a great acting performance, and I'll show you a failure. So I think it can be taken too seriously, you know. I really do. I think, was it Pauline Kael retired lately and took a parting shot at De Niro? Her limited knowledge as she rides into the sunset with her iffy husband? I mean, what is that about? You know, it's, you know, his gifts far go beyond her limited knowledge.
But that doesn't mean, just for the sake of argument, that as long as someone acknowledges that they have no right to speak contemptuously of a De Niro, that being acknowledged, they could still have a legitimate observation about him.
Absolutely, but that doesn't make it any more legitimate than my next door neighbor. Usually I think the prerequisite to being a good critic is to have a very good writing style and an opinion. But, you know, when I was a young actor and came to New York, I chose to study with Sanford Meisner. I think Brando and guys like that, De Niro went to Stella Adler. Other people went to Strasberg. And if you were going to study with a woman, there's some wonderful, there was Uta Hagen, there was Stella Adler, there was Mira Rostova. These were people, you know, that were very critical, but would give credit where credit was due. But, you know, people that had practiced the craft and then were now imparting it by becoming teachers. I never heard of an actor that really went to New York and studied with Pauline Kael or whoever, or anybody. I don't think they give acting, you know, workshops or whatever. So I think you have to be careful that you can't, but these people write in print, and 50 years from now they'll see something like an indictment on, you know, concerning someone, and people say, oh, well, they must not have been very good. So I think, you know, in a way, through the written word, they get the last laugh in a way, and it's really, the qualification is not that high, really. because nobody directs, nobody asks, so I don't know how they really know.
Although
But
I
we
guess,
do.
don't audiences, and in some cases critics, confuse elaborate behavior sometimes for great acting?
Yes.
Which is not to say that the
Yes.
two are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
It is not to say that Daniel Day-Lewis didn't do a wonderful job in My Left Foot.
But he didn't do any better than the kid that played him as a young kid. That kid should have got an award, too. That kid was terrific. Both of them were good.
But when somebody really emotes, or when they play someone whose physical circumstances appear to be demanding, then it seems that the appreciation comes more quickly
Absolutely,
than
you
a
get
more controlled performance.
You do this and you get more points. You know, people go, bravo, bravo, bravo. You know, they do, you know, and they may do it well, and some people may not do it so well, but they still say, oh, he's terrific. Like I had explained to a friend of mine once, because the guy comes on film with pock marks, a big nose, and an interesting face, doesn't mean that he's going to act any better than a guy who comes on film that looks like Tom Cruise. Just because you're good looking and hand doesn't mean you can't act. You know, I mean, think people, you know, and if you play the villain and you hit it heavy and you're over the top, people, wow, that's great. And a guy comes on and plays a dull guy, but he's very truthful. He's not going to score the points, but in a way it may be a purer performance than the guy who's like chewing it up and trying to make points.
Bob, do you agree with Maureen Stapleton that actors have to be clever as rats to survive?
Rats? You mean emotionally or financially? How did she mean? I mean, just overall, or?
I think the struggle, I think the more actors I meet, the more people I speak to, whether it's you, John Voight, Dustin Hoffman, whomever, and the reality that actors spend most of their lives waiting for work.
Yeah, well, in that sense, you know, I think that maybe we are like rats. I don't know if that's a good parallel, but yeah, maybe there is that thing you're always waiting. You always. I think sometimes the rat doesn't stay hungry though, when he keeps working, and you got to stay hungry no matter how old you get. Kim Stanley once said to me, "There are brilliant actors in this country, in America, from age 25 to 40, but after 40 something happens. You get hungry, you get lethargic." And I always try to remember that, you know. And some actors get better as they get older. Some better. A young guy like Gene is mature. Hopefully I think I'm mature. And always try to think of myself in the potential state. Always trying to improve. As long as you know, whatever you're, a rat, whatever. I don't care what. As long as you stay hungry and stay willing, open to being better and improving, I think. But it is a different kind of profession. It is.